And for the long run, that is the most important thing. The development staff are working very hard. They've got a number of terrific prospects. They've lined up a lot of prospects for me to talk to. And so I'm really confident that we will do well in this capital campaign. And, you know, more than that, that our alumni and our donors will continue to find the value proposition here at UVA is something they want to support. Mm-hmm.
Let's go to Dan, since he has to leave. Dan, do you want to pop in with a question?
Okay, I'll think one up. President Sullivan, I guess the obvious question to ask is, you know, people have, some of my sources around the country have said negative things about Virginia as a state in terms of its support for higher education. Do you think Virginia, as a state entity, is supportive right now of public higher education or not? I mean, bearing in mind you've got two of the best public universities in the country, but the support, I think, at UVA, President Castine told me, was down to like 10% of all the revenue.
You know, it's true that it's true that the states have not been able to support higher education to the extent that they used to. But I don't believe in any state that that's a result of not seeing higher education as valuable or something that they want for their citizens. I think instead it simply reflects the terrific pressures that state legislatures find themselves under these days. And you know some of those pressures. And you know, I could list them for you, but I think they're pretty evident. There's lots of competing demands for the discretionary dollar that legislature has to work with. So, you know, in that respect, I do not think that Virginia is markedly different from most of the other states. And I certainly don't sense here any antagonism towards higher education or any sense that higher education is not something highly valued. I had lunch yesterday with the governor at the governor's mansion, and certainly my sense was that he was deeply committed to higher education. I also met the Secretary of Education, who, you know, also struck me as somebody who cares deeply about higher education. So I don't think it's a matter of the will, I think it's a matter of the means.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Kiara?
Sure. Thank you for having us. I had the chance to ask professors, around faculty and staff and students kind of a wish list for you. And most of them said, we would like to see graduate students, their salary funded more. If there's a problem, they all think that graduate students are underfunded in certain areas, which is the sciences.
Mm-hmm.
You know, do you have any thoughts on that, and what would you like to do to increase that?
Sure. Well, it is a problem generally, not just at Virginia, finding adequate ways to fund graduate students. It's very important because the graduate students that we produce are our future faculty, and more than that, especially in the sciences, they're also the R&D labor force for much of the rest of the country. But many of them come to us now carrying undergraduate debt, and they don't want to be indebted any further. So that's one of the reasons we look for ways to defray their expenses for tuition and also their living expenses. And it's been difficult to keep up with the cost of living for graduate students. I'm aware that it's an issue, and we'll do what we can do to work on it. But, you know, it's one more in a whole set of budgetary issues. It's certainly not the only one, but it's one I care a lot about. Graduate education in many ways is what distinguishes the research university from other kinds of universities. So there are, frankly, many schools in the United States where you can get a terrific four-year undergraduate education. What adds the extra to a place like the University of Virginia is that here undergraduates have the opportunity to work with graduate students and to think about, maybe I would like to do this too, maybe this is a career path for me. And it also helps to attract the best faculty members, because the faculty members want to be able to work with these advanced students. They want to work with them in terms of their own research. They want to work with them just in terms of how intellectually satisfying it is to work with an advanced student. So it's those three groups working together, faculty, graduate students, and undergraduates, that really make a research university special. And one of the things that's fabulous about an undergraduate education here on the grounds is that so many of our undergraduate students do get to participate in the research of faculty and graduate students. It's really something that's not available to you at a lot of places. So I very much appreciate the significance of the graduate students. I was a graduate dean for 7 years.
We're going to jump to AP. Zini, are you there?
Yes,
Okay.
I am. I guess, as everyone knows, parents and student families are just increasingly concerned about bearing a higher share of their kids' education in the form of higher tuition. And can you address that component? I guess that sort of dovetails with declining appropriations for higher ed, but can you just address that piece of the puzzle in terms of paying for school, basically?
Right. Well, here's what I would say to a parent who's thinking about paying for school. I would say, don't just look at the sticker price, because that may not be what you end up paying. UVA has one of the most generous financial aid programs in the United States. And until you have figured that in, you don't know what your financial situation is. In addition, many parents, especially in the middle income ranges, are qualified for federal tax credits for the tuition they pay. You also have to look at that in terms of an offset against what you'll have to pay in taxes before you know what the real cost of the education is going to be. We'll do what we can, certainly, to keep it affordable for families. And I think it, in many ways, is more affordable this year than it was, say, 10 years ago, to help with them with this. Many of them, are away from home for the first time. They've not really had to budget their money before. Some of them have a brand new credit card for the first time. And they need advice on how to use that wisely. So we are prepared to help provide that advice to them.
Dan?
That's impossible.
Okay. Melissa, do you have anything?
Yes. I would like to know if in the future, if you're looking to expand any of the degree programs or maybe adding possibly new degree programs to the university.
That's a matter to which I give great deference to the faculty, because the faculty typically propose new degree programs and also the rationale for those. And I think that it's important to listen to what faculty think is important, and then also to consider whether the existing degree programs then should remain. So, for example, when I was the graduate dean at Texas, because biology has transformed itself, and one of the things that happened, we're giving PhDs in zoology and botany. And I think Dr. Garson will tell you that those fields basically aren't recognized anymore. What happened was that biologists reorganized themselves into fields such as molecular biology and ecology and evolutionary biology and so on. And so the old programs in zoology and botany eventually faded away. Well, it was important to actually stop admitting students to those programs because it was much more valuable to them to have a PhD in molecular biology than have a PhD that said zoology. So that kind of evolution in the thinking of, particularly in the sciences, but also in the humanities, about how you put together knowledge into a coherent program, something you always have to look at. And today there's such tremendous interest in interdisciplinary programs, but not surprisingly, many of these interdisciplinary programs eventually develop into new programs of their own. An example of this is biochemistry. For a long time, people didn't know, does that belong in biology, does that belong in chemistry? Now most universities say, well, no, it's a new field, it's called biochemistry. So new programs really result from intellectual trends, and I rely on the faculty to give me advice about that. But I'd certainly be open to hearing the arguments for new programs when they make sense.